Right, I've all my buttons pressed, so over to you.
All right, I think we should be good.
And there's directionality in that. And I think an awful lot of this, what I want to talk about magic is this kind of directionality. And the directionality of magic is outwards. It's expansive.
That's formation of a thing, something coming together or being made.
It's ejaculatory. It's creation. It's movement.
In some ways, it's of its time. In some ways, it's not.
Ultimately, yeah, I don't really know what it is or how to describe it.
Go and do magic rather than sitting around thinking about magic or what you're allowed to do, and find out for yourself if magic works or not.
And hello, good people of the internet. This is I, Tom Kelly.
Welcome, everyone. I am Serious Magician Kennedy, and this is Chaos Magic News. Today, we have an amazing interview. Tommie Kelly doesn't really need an introduction for most of our listeners, but if you do, Tommie is an occultist, an artist, a writer, a musician, and a blogger in no particular order. He's the creator of one of the most popular oracle decks in contemporary occultism, the 40 Servants, many comics and albums, and of course, the hub of pretty much everything he's been doing for the last couple years, Adventures in Woo Woo. Mr. Kelly.
Hi.
Thank you for talking to us. How you doing?
Very good. Thank you for asking me. It's a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to this. This should be fun. It's been a while since I did a podcast with that wasn't just mine, so that should be good.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Me and my co-host were on somebody else's podcast about like couple weeks ago, and we just had to sit there awkwardly for a moment being like, oh yeah, is this what it's like for everyone else? Jeez, this is awful.
yeah it's a very different experience, but I don't know, you just have to switch off and just pretend that you're just talking to a person rather than whatever the world or whatever it is.
Yeah, so we've opened every interview we've done so far with this question, and I'm really curious to what you're going to say to it. Why should you care about chaos magic?
Right, well, I've kind of listened to what other people said, so I don't want to reiterate. I suppose the standard answer, is that thing, well, you shouldn't, but I think you should. Because it's kind of like saying, why should I care about politics? It's like, whether or not you care about it, it's still happening and it still affects you. So whether or not you care about chaos magic or magic, it's still going to affect you. So you may as well engage with it and try to use it to your advantage, if it's something that's already going to be part of the world. That is, if you subscribe to the notion that we live in a magical world, which I do. So I think it's important to pay attention to the landscape that you find yourself in and the rules that go with it.
Yeah, that's not a bad answer. You tiptoed around all the other things people said, so good on you.
I could just say what and what everyone else said. So, yeah, plus that, yeah.
Well, you've been a really busy man for the last 6 or 7 months. I mean, I could really say years, but like specifically, you put out. Let's see. I know you put out a bunch of music over the last 6 months. A couple music videos.
Mm-hmm.
You released, I believe. It was at the end that you put out the collection for the comic right at the end of the year, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, or the beginning of this year. Everything is so hazy since COVID. It's like, well, what is time?
Oh yeah.
When did this happen? Is that 10? Was that 10 years ago or 10 minutes ago? It's really, yeah. So yeah, within the last year, I would say it's definitely come out I think it came, probably December. I think that's, although. Who knows?
Yeah,
who knows when it came out? Yeah.
I can't remember who I was talking to about it, but it's if you never had any interest in like the strange phenomena of experiencing time, like COVID definitely got your interest into it because
for sure,
we were totally dissociated from all the normal metrics we use to measure it, and it's just become completely off the wall. But anyway, and I should have written the date down, but I didn't. I think it was about a month ago now that you put out a new deck.
Yeah, the Nidana deck, or the Nidana cards, which is based on the Buddhist idea of dependent origination, or Nidanas, which just translates meanings as causes. That's what Nidana means. But it's strange because I actually finished that about a year ago,
Oh.
over a year ago. Yeah. So it's kind of been sitting around for a while because the guy who I did it with, it was originally his idea, Duncan Barford. He had done like 10 years ago, a decade ago, when he was back doing, or just after did the website with Alan Chapman, the Baptist Head. I think he had, at this point, he'd gone to where he is now, which is Cult Experiments in the Home. And he kind of put together this notion of a system based on the Nidanas, the Buddhist idea of the Nidanas, because it was kind of, from a case magic point of view, there's always this kind of thing that's put forward that you should make your own divination system. You know, that's part of what you should do as a case magician. So this was his thing of that. And he just kind of put it together using like stock images or, stuff he found on the internet. So he never really released it, although he did kind of more or less write the guidebook. I think it was, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years, let's say 2 years ago, let's say a million years ago, sometime in the distant past, in the galaxy far, far away, he asked me would I be interested in doing it, and it just, whatever was just, I was in that between the million things that I do, and it says, yeah, that sounds like something interesting to do. But I actually had it finished by July of last year, and we were waiting for him then to write the book to go with it, to release it together. And then, for many reasons, mostly just time reasons, life reasons, he didn't get to do it. So we said, rather than just kind of waiting, until the next 5 years, whatever, until there's an opportunity to write the book, let's just release it now anyway, with a kind of a smaller guidebook that comes with it and the website stuff. So that's what we did. And so it's, in one sense, it's new and it's just out. But it's like, oh, it's so last year for me. It's like, it's like, but it's because I had to kind of relearn it a bit, because I got really deep into it when I was doing it, and there's a whole year between it. And I hadn't used it or anything. So then when I came back and we started doing the videos about it, where we going through each corridor, I kind of had to learn the whole thing again. And it's like going, right, I better understand this a bit better than I am at the minute if I'm going to try to convince people of it. But yeah, so that's been interesting. So yeah, so that's more or less just to say that that wasn't done recently. Like I'm not an absolute superhuman that can manage to squeeze in an oracle deck as well as do all the other stuff that I put out recently.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of superhuman qualities to being able to have things coming out on a super consistent kind of basis like that, especially projects that are so big. Even if you did it a year ago, getting a deck out is got to be a nightmare to begin with. So I'm sure there's lots involved there.
Yeah, I don't think it's really superhuman qualities more than extreme guilt and feeling that I have to be constantly productive to justify my existence. It's the good Irish Catholic upbringing that unless you're actually doing something of value, then you have personally no value. So it's yeah. So it's my superhuman ability, my X-Man mutant ability is trauma. So.
Oh man, yeah. As growing up as a Catholic boy in America myself, I have a lot of those similar feels. So I'm glad that it's something a little more universal.
Well, no, don't be glad. Don't be glad that there's trauma in the world.
Look, if we're going to experience trauma, at least it's in ways that we can understand each other a little bit,
Well, yes, yeah, and actually might do something with our lives. Yeah, there is there's something to be said about it, I suppose. But at the same time,
yeah,
let's not do that to the next generation.
I'd prefer no trauma, but so you mentioned the videos that you were doing, just going through all the cards. What was the idea behind that, other than just kind of, giving people a brief explanation of what's going on? Was it really is it just promotional, or is it just sort of like, this might be the best way to teach people about this sort of thing, is just sit down?
Well,
you do a lot of that sort of thing on your channel and your Patreon and stuff to begin with, so...
Yeah, it's just when I did the 40 Sermons, when I put it out, and it had a book, and it had and I put all the stuff on the website as well. I then noticed that if I talked about it in videos, people seem to, the information seemed to go in or a bit easier, or people seem to understand it or something. I don't know. There's a bit more. Sometimes when you're reading about a particular system or something, you say you're reading about the tarot or the runes or whatever it is, and you go, all right, I read that. It just doesn't go in. But if you watch a video or something, people, it seems to, certain type, certain personality anyway, can kind of grasp on it a bit more. So that putting up the videos as well is also a way of people who don't want to spend money on a book can understand what it is as well. And it's a good way of just quickly referencing something to someone by going, here's the video,
Oh, right, yeah.
3 or 4 minutes just talking about it. And so when it came to doing the Nadana cards, I said, well, I'm going to pretty much do exactly what I did for the 47s because that worked, but try to, maybe do it slightly better. And kind of, I suppose, the fault with the 47s ones, they can kind of blabber on a bit. So at least with this one, and there's 2 people talking in it with me and Duncan, so it's not just me. So there's an interaction, and there's if there's something that needs clarity, that can come out, in a conversation that can't really come out when you're just talking to a camera yourself. You can get feedback, and then afterwards, you can change it or whatever. But in the kind of recording of it, and so. Then on the website, because also there's no book as yet with the Nadana cards, you want as much resources for people as possible to, who have paid for the cards or want to work with the cards. And well, here's everything we've written about it. Here's us having a discussion about it. And here's all, here's whatever, a load of graphics and whatever
right.
that goes with it, so. But also, yeah, promotion. I mean, for sure, because, I mean, if you have 26 cards and you do 26 videos, well, that's 6 months of a video a week. So it's a way of keeping it in people's mind. Because an awful lot of this stuff, and you find it a lot with music as well, unless you're super successful, is that you launch something and you get like a day or 2, and then that's it, then it's gone. It's the next thing has happened or whatever. So you can spend like 6 months recording an album and release it on Friday, and by the following Friday... you may start your next album because it's at its moment. So at least if you have something where you have a continuing amount of videos, 1 a week, it's still there, and still you're still giving energy to it. You're still it's still in people's mind. You're still posting about it. It's not just everything happens the week it came out. Here's the course. Here's the 26 videos. All of that stuff. It's an ongoing thing. So to think of it as if the Nadana cards were like a servitor, say you're still constantly feeding the servitor of that by continuing over,
Right. Yeah, definitely. I see that the Nadana deck wasn't exactly your brain. You weren't the brainchild behind that.
No, it's definitely Duncan, and I'm definitely not a Buddhist. That's one thing I've discovered about the Nadana. But it is a chaos magic approach. We're both chaos magicians. Duncan's not a Buddhist either. Well, he's definitely more Buddhist leaning than I am. But I think, I've said this before a number of times, I think at some point, particularly chaos magicians, but anyone who's involved in this kind of stuff, at some point everyone becomes a Buddhist, at least for a while.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And there's some of the stuff that, I don't know, just the whole non-self thing. I don't know. It's like, I get it, and... yeah, I don't know. It's just, it doesn't sit right with me. And just, it's, I suppose an awful lot of the Buddhist stuff as well, though, that you have, it's it's kind of westernized Buddhism. And then you have also like secular Buddhism, which is taking all the interesting bits out of it and just having the corporate Google meditation versions of it.
Yeah. But, no, I understand that. There's especially being in the corporate world a bit myself, seeing the amount of repurposed Buddhism that gets thrown out. And
and it's quite dangerous because it's like it's kind of pretending that meditation is all rosy and nothing bad ever happens. It's only good. It'll only you meditate and everything works. Even even your joints get better, or even your muscles get tight, or whatever. All this, and it's like there's huge parts of meditation that are nasty and dark, and there's no kind of support for that when you take it out of context of the actual system that it's within. If you'd start doing Buddhist meditation and take out all the teachings, people are going to get in trouble, and you can see that kind of filtering through. It's like all the dark night of the soul stuff, and someone like Daniel Ingram's really good in that. He's a American Buddhist teacher, but he talks a lot about there's some heavy stuff that happens, and if you are going around and setting up systems that don't incorporate that, you're going to get people in trouble. And I think he's right. Like, not everyone, but it does happen. And so, if you're being told that you're having a bad experience in meditation or if you're having a bad experience during meditation when all you've been told is how wonderful it is, well, what do you do with that? And then if you go to your teacher who has taken all the context out of it, they don't know what to do with it either, So it's an interesting one, strange one, but That's the modern world for you, I suppose, you know. But just to go back to the Nadana thing, I think that we were both. It's a chaos magic approach to that. So it's a chaos magic in like I can't imagine some of the ways we approach the images and the ideas of it that anyone on the Buddhist subreddit would really appreciate some of the things. Like we brought in the idea of the holy guardian angel. We've even the idea of self is a bit in it, a bit more than Buddhists would probably want. And so I would, if you're not that keen on Buddhism, but you're keen on chaos magic, I think this could be your door into having a look at what the paradigm is, in that kind of acting as if type of stuff.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And I think Buddhism's a great sort of thing to delve into from a chaos magic perspective to begin with, just because if you really dig into it, again, getting away from the sort of sanitized Western and, as much as I love Alan Watts, getting away from those sorts of,
let's not throw Alan Watts in with a lot of that.
The point being,
he's the man. I know what you mean, though.
Yeah,
I do know what you mean.
Well, getting away from the sort of 4 a.m. deep talk YouTube video side of Buddhism.
Well, with the background music and the clickbait title, you need this will change your life. You need to listen to this.
Right. Yeah. See for the first time. But getting away from it has a lot of very challenging ideas to the typical Western psyche, we'll say. Maybe that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. But also it aligns with an awful lot of like modern science thought and stuff. Like an awful lot of what Buddhism would say about the non-self stuff. Like Daniel Dennett also would say, that this kind of idea of consciousness is just an illusion.
Right.
And it's like an epiphenomenon of the brain. I guess Daniel Dennett would say whatever. And it's like, yeah, well, the Buddhists said that 2,500 years ago. And while I think it's true, because you can see it, you can 100% see that this thing that you call you is just a number of things arising. And that, it's not like when you were 7, there's very little of you that is the same person as you were when you were 7 or 8 or 10 or whatever. But yet there's this kind of continuity, or this kind of sense of continuity, even though all it was a number of beliefs happening. And when you start really investigating those type of things, you can really see, well, that's not my belief. That's just what my dad thought. That's what my mum thought. Or I got that from this part of my personality from a particular friend I was hanging around with, or a rock star, or an actor, or there's all these things that we just kind of amalgamate together and bring in. I call it us, and you can see that. But I think ultimately, and a bit more, I suppose, in the Kashmir Shaivism point of view, where underneath that there is, I feel there's something. I can get to the point where it's not there in meditation. I can see the whole thing. It seems to be, it's not satisfying in the way that it seems to be satisfying for a lot of people. I don't know. I suppose I'm just not as impressed by by it in some ways. I can't really describe it because it just sounds like I'm just talking out of my arse. But there's a lot of like Buddhism is quite practical, pragmatic, and the kind of teachings on suffering are good, but there's a limit to it as well. It's kind of like if you can let the events and the situations in your life not annoy you, then you will be happy. And you go, yeah, that's true. It's not always. It's like if I could just be okay with this guy constantly punching me in the face, then I would be happy. You know what I mean? And it's like that is true. There's no question that is true. But is it always helpful, in that kind of way? I'm being very unfair to Buddhism, but when you take things to certain lengths and certain conclusions, most things will fall apart. And even Buddhism, which I suppose in some sense claims to have the entire truth of creation, for me anyway, it can often fall apart at the edges. You can start seeing the cracks, but it's you can learn an awful lot about yourself and the world and along the journey.
Yeah, I think part of going back to the idea of the sort of corporatizing and sanitizing of Buddhism, it's the same thing that's happened with like Stoicism, where it's where you're completely right.
Exactly that.
It's this idea of if I can just put up with all of the horrible things that are happening to me on a consistent basis and just be okay with it, then I'll be fine, and I can just go through the capitalist hellscape we live in. But
yeah, I mean, ultimately, that's it. If you could just put up with all the bullshit and let us make all our money, but that would be great for everyone. You know, that would just be, if you could just be good factory working bees. Thanks very much. That's all we're asking.
yeah, it's but there is a genuine power to being able to have those sorts of things, because there are things in this world that you have to go through that do not have any easy way out of, and they don't even have at least with the confines of like corporate existence, or having to just struggle under for survival, at least you have something that you can be morally outraged against, or you can work towards some sorts of change on a social level. If you're one of those types of people, there's a reaction to it that you can have that at least has some sort of satisfaction, where there's plenty of things in life that just don't have easy reasons, or they're just as simple as like, oh man, my knee hurts every day now. Well, yeah, congratulations, you're 45. This is what happens.
Yeah. That's your knees. That's just your knees now. That's how it goes. Yeah, the Buddhists would say, though, that everything is ultimately unsatisfactory. Like, it's the three characteristics. There's no self, it's unsatisfactory, and Tommie's brain, it'll come back to me in a minute. But that ultimately, that you, no matter what you pursue, and you can pursue anything, when you get to the end of it, you will see that it has no inherent self to it. It's just a thing that's arising, and it's unsatisfactory, that it's not giving you what you want. And so even though, like, you can say that, well, at least with this, there is a way, it's just a continuing a cycle.
Oh, right,
but
right.
That's from the Buddhist point of view. But one of the things I find that I don't like about it, and kind of, it's this kind of sense of there's an acquiescence in it that I don't think it's exactly what the teachings are, but it's this notion of, you have to accept the way things are, okay? And and there's this kind of sense that there's no point in, you can't desire anything. You can't want it to be different. You can't, want new things, because if you desire stuff, that's what's
bad.
causing your suffering.
Yeah, desire is what you're grasping. You have attachments.
Yeah. It's Trishna, it's called. It's like there's a thirst, and I mean, not exactly in the way the internet calls thirst now, but it's not that much difference, to be fair. All these thirsty people, but I think mostly what it's trying to point at, in a way, is that not that you can't change the future, not that you can't pursue things, not that you can't want things, in a sense, or whatever, depending on what Buddhist you're talking about. It's it's not that they're saying that you have to accept that things will always be like this. What it's saying is that you have to accept that things are like this now. That there's no point in sitting here and going, I wish I was richer now, because you're not. This where you are is where you are. Or I wish I was fitter. I wish I was younger. I wish something different had happened in the past. And that's the stuff that can't be changed. And that's the stuff that has to be accepted. But you can go and then make something out of your life too. It's not that you have to accept this place. But you have to accept it in the present moment, that this is how it is. The way things are the way things are. But that doesn't mean then that has to stay like that forever. That you have to acquiesce to that you have to kind of surrender to that, or to, just become something, rather than being active in the world, of just being reacting to everything and just kind of accepting it, lying down and dying, that's sense. But move towards your things. But at each moment, you accept where you are. And that's, it's not that you're wanting to be somewhere else. It's like almost like a kid when they kind of wish their life away because they want it to be Christmas. How long left now? When is it my birthday? Whatever it is. And you're kind of wishing your life away because you're not in the present. You're just kind of wanting something else. So I think that's more it. And I can kind of get behind that. But when you get to the acquiescence stuff, which is very much kind of pushed by an awful lot of different kind of teachings, and particularly in the kind of New Age Buddhism and stuff like that, it disenchants the world. And that's where I think the kind of crossroads between, say, your Buddhism or your mystical paths, whatever, and the magic paths is in that. And I go, no, I do want something for my life. I do want to change things. I do want something to create, to desire, or whatever it is. And it's okay in the sense of that where you are and what you're looking for. You're not trying to change the past. You're not trying to change who you are in the present. You're not trying to change the way the world is. But you can change the world will be, which is the path of the magician. The directionality is different in a sense. That makes sense. Am I making sense?
Yes, yeah. No, that's beautiful. I will save the people that aren't as indoctrinated into my Martin Heidegger rants the people that go, oh, hey, Tommie Kelly. But like, oh, what the fuck is this guy talking about? But I will say Heidegger has this concept of how we exist in the world where he calls it thrownness. It's this idea of, it's basically what you were talking about before. It's how we always already exist in a world that has history, where we have baggage, we have these things that have happened to us, we have things that are completely beyond our control and all these things, but we are projecting into the future, where it's, we have things that we, despite our thrownness and our current moment in the world and everything, we have things that we're directing ourselves towards. And it's always, there's a lot about it's always at the cost of other potentialities and so on and so forth. But I like that idea, I guess is all I'm getting at. Is like I like the way you described it as, there's the magical path is a lot of directing yourself towards change in the future from where you're at now, without without grasping onto the things of our past and our experience
it's like, if you kind of see it as, well, the way I see it is like creativity, art, all of these things is an expansive movement outwards. It's an evolutionary kind of movement of expansion to become greater than what is already the case, rather than the kind of sense of, particularly when you have things like, I suppose, in Kashmir Shaivism, where we're saying that what we have now is the full, expansive, all-pervading thing of God. There's nothing new that will ever exist ever. It's already, the emanation is complete. And that's where I disagree with, as much as I like Shaivism, and it's really, it's a wonderful philosophy, but it's like, I don't think it is. I think the point of all of it is expansion and creation and moving towards something. It's like the creation gets more complicated and as it goes on. And I think it's like, I don't know, I recently wrote a piece in my newsletter which talked about, well, what would that be? And it's kind of like, well, rather than a God that knew everything at the beginning and, for some reason decided he's going to forget everything for a laugh, to play a game, let's have all this endless suffering and torture and disgustingness just because I'm bored. That's what an awful person that would be, or God would be. But it's like, what if he doesn't know? And this is him finding out. Or whatever. And it's the process of becoming a God, or working it out. And why is the creation but shit? Because we're trying to work out how not for it to be. But if you have something that it's starting where I know everything, I have it all, and then you go, well, you have the problem of evil. Well, why would someone want that? And I know that kind of standard answer is, well, why do you watch a horror film? Well, the difference is I know it's a horror film.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, like, we're embedded in this. There's no way out of it. I can't leave the cinema if I don't like the movie. Well, I suppose you could, but
I like that idea. It's kind of I'm just dropping philosophers here and stuff, but it's kind of a Hegelian idea. This idea of the realization of spirit and mind coming into the world. It's like nothing was laid out in a particular manner of like, all right, this is how everything is, and this is how it is, and all it takes is for you to get on board with it. It's a process. It's a discussion. It's a conversation of things realizing and coming into form so we can understand how they should be. It's also very Aeon of Horus kind of Crowley idea. I think the one theological innovation that Crowley doesn't get as much credit for as he probably should is just the idea of a cosmos or a divinity that is growing and changing, as opposed to just repeating in cycles or pointing towards like an apocalypse. The ever-looming apocalypse.
So. Yeah, and I mean, it's essentially that's the kind of idea of the new age too, isn't it? Like the age of Horus, the age of Aquarius, and everyone has their own ages. Several ages are available for depending what mood you're in. But I just think it's just. There's something about the mystical path. I followed it for a long while. I kind of fell off the magic track for a while and became like essentially a mystic or I don't know. It's just one that got me really depressed and really that's what I'm talking about, the acquiescence thing of just going like that. I don't have any power or say in my life at all. You just kind of have to go with it. And it says, and it's like, I don't like that. And it's like, it's probably a bit more over here than in America. You kind of have more in America this kind of notion of you have to do something, be someone, or you can get to it. But we don't have that here. It's like, what we have here is how dare you try that? How dare you try to be something. Who do you think you are trying to do something with your life? So like, I mean, I do admire, as much as it has its warped sense too, the kind of American attitude in that, compared to the traumatic Irish Catholic of how dare you, because at the end, because like, you becoming good, or you doing something in some way is offensive to God. How like that? How disgusting is that as a thought to have?
Oh yeah. It's, well, I mean, I suppose the idea of the rugged American individual is something we try to keep very alive here in America, but we have our own end of that too, right? Because we have the alternative side of, when you're trying to do something and make something out of your life, you're just mocked for it. It's not an offense. It's just like, it's taken as a joke. Like, oh, you're trying to do something. You're going to be something.
Like,
totally.
I mean, I assumed that was kind of a thing, but I didn't know it was like, I thought it was just like the American dream and everyone was entitled to it. And there you go. I mean,
go. I mean, be an American and start a podcast, Kelly. Watch it happen.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying. I think especially in the, we've been talking a lot about the contemporary occult revival we have since, I think about maybe 10 years ago at most, it started coming back very strong. And now, now you have freaking tarot cards and Sephora and stuff like that. It's a lot more prominent, at least here. It's come really back into vogue. And we've been talking about a lot of the reasons why. And I think it has a lot to do with people feeling, a lot of what you were saying, not only just discouraged from actually making any changes in their life, but discouraged from the ability to make any change, have any agency in their world. And if nothing else, I think occultism's been very good for trying to bring back that sense of people having some sort of ability to affect the future.
Yeah, but there is as I was saying, the looming apocalypse. It's this kind of sense of this feeling of, well, what's the point of anything? Because we're all going to be dead in 50 years because of climate change, or the aliens, or war, or nuclear war, or whatever. All of that, pandemics, this kind of thing. But it's again, that kind of fuels the, the hopelessness, I suppose, in one sense. But another thing that's fueling that is the apocalyptic religions and philosophies that seem to be wanting to, to bring on the apocalypse. And part of whatever your thoughts around climate change or whatever, but one of the things that certainly is why people don't care about it is because they don't think that this is the real place. It's like, so what does this matter? This is an illusion. This is Maya. This is, our real place is in heaven, or, the new earth, or whatever. But it's not here. It's somewhere. It's, once I plug out of the matrix and get out of this simulation, my real life is there. So it doesn't matter about any of this. There is that kind of thing where, but that's not how it works. Like, even the things that say it's an illusion, whatever. It's not that it's an illusion in that it's not real. It's that we are delusional about it. It's not that there's no out there. I mean, or it's not. I understand the simulation theory, and it's good fun to kind of hang around with it. But it just, and especially when you get into things like people saying, and NPCs, and the whole thing seems like we have this real need to dehumanize the human experience in both like religions and the occult and spirituality. It's like, do everything you can to get away from having this human experience. Everything. Meditate all day so that you awaken to whatever the truth. Pray to God all the time and be nice so that you have your place in heaven, in the other place. Become woke so that you can pull yourself out of the simulation. It's like, well, no, what about actually looking at your life and having a life? This thing that we've spent so long getting to. Let's do that, and maybe look after it once in a while as well.
It's something I've talked about with people before, and it's people don't like hearing it, but it's this idea that, again, not talking specifically about, because I'm sure there are very, very intelligent, good Christians that aren't 100% on this.
I don't mean to say that.
And I know there's lots of Buddhists that would argue with this, and they're right to a point. But a lot of the contemporary religious and mystical kind of doctrines that we have, especially things like Gnosticism that have come really back into vogue in the last however so many years, are ultimately nihilistic ideas. And it's the same reason. It's the reason why like the sort of secular world mimics all of them in a lot of ways. It's like you said, the apocalyptic idea of, we're going to get out of the matrix. This is all Maya, or we're going to be in heaven. That's just the like the transhumanist crowd and, the tech bros. They have the same idea. Like, we're going to get off this planet We're going to go colonize other planets. They'll do anything to delegitimize the world that we currently live in and the people we have. And they'll just, like you said, they'll just come up with whatever kind of rationale they can. It's like, oh, well, we can't fight climate change already. It's already too late. Well, we'll just get out of here. It's fine. We just need to funnel all of our money to leaving the planet.
Let's give up in a sense. And it's like, in one sense, a lot of the kind of the Wiccan stuff is looked down on as this kind of fluffy thing, but at least they're on board with the actually having an earth-based spirituality,
right.
that are in tune with the planet, the seasons, with the nature, with all this, and particularly when you get into the more animistic kind of witchcraft. Totally, that's what it should be, and it's like we just. I don't know. It's just so strange, and that one thing I found part of the thing that got me really down, and it's more than just this kind of very petty thing I'm trying to express. But one of the things when my exploration was this kind of negation of the human experience. Directionality is inwards to find the real you, the real thing, the real secret, or whatever it is, the awakening, have all these experiences, rather than this thing, the width and the direction of magic being outwards, creativity and art and evolution and all of these things. And I just found it was got very kind of bogged down in it, and I couldn't really see a way out of it within the thing, other than I said, right, I'm going to have to start maybe become actually a magician if I claim, even to the point I didn't even know what I was like, am I a chaos magician anymore? What am I? I have no idea. And then I said, no, I'm going to make a definite reclaim on magic and personal power, man. And all of these things. Now, that's the major working of this year is the reclamation of all of these things that I have given away or let go or been influenced by or let in or whatever. It's like, that sounds like I'm saying it's someone else's fault. It's 100% my fault. And it's not my fault because it's no one's fault, because that's just a thing. You have to travel through this stuff. You have to go through it. Sometimes there's the dark night of the soul. Sometimes you get to the, in the Dana cards, there's a whole kind of, in the second section, which is the way out section. The first section is how we got here. The second section is the way out. There's, after the bliss, the happiness, the enlightenment, the thing, there's disenchantment. And it's, this is the dark night of the soul. This is about where you realize that everything, it's not that everything's an illusion, but that you've been delusional about everything. It's almost a bit like, I suppose, in one way, like say you've been married 20 years, and then one day you find out that for the last 10 years that your partner has been having an affair. Nothing has changed, but everything has changed. You know what I mean? It was like, it's the nature of the world hasn't changed or anything, but your past has changed in your head because all the things that you thought was a certain way weren't. And, you start making different connections and all of these kind of things. And then you become disenchanted. And I think it's a great word, and I think where we are as a society is very, disenfranchised, and we're very disenchanted. And I think it's kind of the job of the magician to re-enchant the world, as I think that's originally a Gordon White phrase. But I think it's great. Yeah, let's re-enchant the world. It's probably not a Gordon White phrase. That seems like that's probably been around for a while.
I mean, yeah, probably, but I'll give it to White. That's fine.
Yeah. Well, I know it because of him, so that's what I can say.
Since we mentioned the directing everything outward and creation aspect of things, let's talk about some of your art. Turbine Syndrome. Yeah.
So Turbine Syndrome is, it's a comic for people who don't know. It's not a graphic novel because I morally object to the word graphic novel. It's like trying to. I don't know, just the comics. What's wrong with the word? And it's in a sense, like, I mean, it's the hypersigil, right? It's the most overused kind of word, even though it perfectly describes an awful lot of things. But it also has become a word that means, which is fine, but it's it kind of covers way more than what it originally kind of probably did mean when Grant Morrison came up with it in the 90s. And that everything can be a hypersigil now. I'm riding my bike. That's my hypersigil.
Oh yeah. This is my shit post page on Facebook. This is my hypersigil.
Yeah. I'm fine. Okay, right. That there's an argument to be made, and on a lot of days I probably would accept it, and some days I will. For my own personal thing, like what I think a hypersigil is, but like everyone make up their own mind. But so it's a hypersigil always, in many ways, is a thing that you do, which is an ongoing piece of, let's say, creativity that you're doing to reflect the real world, and what you do to your creative piece in a kind of sympathetic magic thing is that you hope then changes your life, the real world. So it's kind of like an expanded version of, say, like the old puppets or the voodoo dolls, whatever. And the classic thing is sticking the pin in it, and by sympathy, the person themselves get it. Although seemingly, most voodoo dolls were used for healing, not for cursing. So the idea with Turbine Syndrome was right. Okay, if that, because I've done a hypersigil before as a comic, which is my comic Dem, which absolutely 100% worked entirely, and I'm pretty convinced led to the 40 Servants. That was the conclusion of the working. If anyone wants to check that out, I have a load of posts on my website that goes through that whole hypersigilness and breaks the whole comic down. But so it goes right. So rather than the hypersigils clearly work, right? It clearly works. We know this. Can I affect Can I affect the world rather than just my life? Like if you're going to think big with magic, why just localize it to yourself? And so the idea of Turbine Syndrome from a magical point of view, not necessarily just a narrative point of view, is an attempt to change the world as a hypersigil. With along those kind of things of ushering in, being that we're so apocalyptic in our thoughts, and being that we're so kind of hell-bent on emanatizing the estigilon, or whatever way that's pronounced, I can never pronounce properly. I'm bringing on this thing, like we've become a bit obsessed in, say, New Age circles or in Crowleyan circles of, the New Age coming in and all this kind of stuff. Well, let's actively do that. But rather than it being an apocalyptic thing, why not have it as something that's great? All the stuff that we kind of always look at great change and upheaval as terrible, or this is going to be an ordeal or something. Well, what if it was the opposite? What if all just what if just like some sort of divine presence came in and kind of fucking fixed everything?
What if things were actually
pretty cool.
Good? Oh my god, crazy!
Imagine we started telling each other stories of a hopeful, good, positive future, where rather than constantly telling each other how crap humans are and how useful we are and how we're the problem and all this. Well, if we stopped telling that story and told a better story, that's the ethos behind Turbine Syndrome. The actual story is set in a kind of seaside town that's kind of touristy, but it starts off in the winter. So it's liminal space, a lot of things coming and going and in and out, and it's kind of echoed through it all. But because it starts in the winter, it's none of the tourists are about, so it's quite bare and empty, and it's kind of these number of people who are in some way connected, and by their kind of redemption and their understanding of themselves and their story, ultimately the idea being that it redeems the entire world. So just very simple little magic working to.
Just a normal thing. I won't dig too deep into the story itself because I do want people to go read it. It's really good. It was
cool.
Great job. But I think what I want to start with there is asking. Well, I mean, and we already mentioned Morrison. So, but what were your big influences as far as that work? Both artistically and magically.
But Turbine Syndrome in specific rather than comics in general.
Oh, yeah. We'll start there.
Yeah, definitely Japanese artists, particularly like Ennio Asano. He did Goodnight Pun Pun, Dead Demons, Deacons, that's a really weird name. And it's really, really good. And it has something just... And the manga stuff is very hard to get into because there's so much of it. And so much of it is not for you, or no matter who you are. It's because it's so catered for a wide variety of tastes, and there's so many different categories and all that. And once you kind of find or situate yourself within it, and you know what you're kind of looking for, I don't know. They're just. I think they're like a different level, particularly the amount they do. Like some of them are doing like. 3 20-page comics a week.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. I know a lot of them have a lot of assistants, but say Ennio Asano, I think he's like 2 assistants and he does most of it himself and he's still doing whatever. And whatever, there's 20 pages and he does some other stuff. He's a new one out and it's quite good. But that was from a kind of an artistic point of view, that was it. And I loved his kind of idea of combining technology with art. So he started off very much with doing taking like all his backgrounds where he went out and photographed things and light boxed them and drew over it and then put it in the background. And then eventually just kind of, we photoshopped. So we do like a threshold kind of filter on it and, then draw over it, so that it's the photo, but it's drawn over it. Then eventually get into using Unreal Engine. So you could create an entire scene or whatever you wanted. And so you could, from whatever angle, whatever the whole thing was, and I goes, right, I'm stealing that.
That's insane.
So what I did was I created the entire seaside liminal space, liminal key it's called, in Unreal Engine. So the entire place actually exists in hyperspace. Down to like you can go into the houses, you can go into all the things. It's like huge. It's so big that it has errors. it just sometimes just goes, we can't open this today. But and all of it's there and everything. So I have the entire whole, I can map out the entire what I want. Like there's in one of the scenes in one of the chapters, a guy just walking through, going from one place to the other, and I could take the camera in the actual 3D space, and then, and I know exactly what it looks like, and then export those images so that it's everything's consistent. If you look at one panel, if you then see it from a different panel, you're trying to guess where it is. It's exactly right because I have it all mapped out, and that was quite important. And what I wanted to do, I wanted it to feel like an actual place and a real place.
Well, I mean, it is a place. It's a place. It is
in a place.
Digital,
then,
it's a place.
Yeah. And I've spent so much time in that place. And it's an interesting thing because Dave Sims, Cerebus, yeah.
We're gonna get to that. Okay.
Yeah. He's talking about it. Like he says, because he's talking about like he's an interesting character, but he's saying like, well, which is real? I've spent more hours in the fictional world that Cerebus is set in the town and that whole thing than I have in real life, particularly during when he was drawing it or whatever. And he's going like, to kind of say that it's not a real place seems a bit ridiculous. Having I've spent most of my life in it, so I understand that. But yeah, so Cerebus would be an influence. Dave Sim, he's I just love the art style, the cross-hatch stuff, all of that kind of thing. And it's quite different from my previous. Like the holy numbers in them are very kind of a bit more open. There's no real kind of drawing, cross hatching or detailed stuff. It's kind of cartoony, a bit more graphic. And this one kind of incorporates that too, but it has a bit more detailed drawing on things from, say, like Ennio Sano, Dave Sim, who else? Al Williamson. Kind of the old newspaper strip guys that that some of those things like Alex Raymond, all of that kind of stuff. That really proper draftsmanship, people who could really draw,
you see the influence quite a bit.
And interestingly, sorry, just before I forget, by the end of Cerebus, Gerhard, who's doing the backgrounds, he was using 3D software to create the backgrounds. Even at that point, he had he says he got an interior design program years ago. So what would it's like it finished. It finished around 2000, something like that. But, or he was, so he was using like some very basic, and he had he says a lamp that came with the software, just like a model of lamp. That's what he used as the reference for Cerebus himself. And then he would print out whatever, so you'd have he'd do out the rooms, he printed out, and he used to do light box it onto a page, then trace it again, and then trace it once again onto the actual Cerebus page, and then actually ink it. And goes, wow. That's an awful lot of work. He says, he'd never do it again. But and he did try to leave because he says this is just insane. But he was talked back into it. So I suppose in a sense maybe Gerhard is probably more the bigger influence in Cerebus than Dave's. Although Dave Sim's character, this kind of caricaturical drawing, his figure drawing is excellent. His expressions.
I was the entire time you were talking about modeling your world, I was sitting there going, I remember I've heard this before, and I was thinking about Gerhard. Well, I mean, since we brought it up, now I have to ask. You made a video, very short one, years ago that I found.
Yeah.
Because earlier this year, I was rereading Cerebus, and you talked about how you believed, or it was at least a theorized idea, that Dave Sim had caught himself in the unintended consequences of a hypersigil with Cerebus.
Yeah, where that video was taken, I decided I was going to do a video every day for the pandemic during the lockdown. And I did it for a good while, and then I went, "Oh, hold on, this is probably going to be years." I'm stop. So it's one of the first. It's a long time ago, and it's kind of back in the day with Dave Sim. There was as much about the comic, which was the first 20 pages was the art, and the second 20 pages was letters, and then eventually got into his biblical
exegesis,
S's, yes, or whatever, that kind of stuff. I don't think you can work on something for that length, that intensity, without it having some sort of magical impact on you. What's your thoughts? Like, what did you?
I mean, well, it's funny, right? Because before watching that little video of yours, I had really gotten down on the entire idea of hyper sigils to begin with. Right? It's like, I get it. You know, Grant Morrison did The Invisibles. It's a big old thing, and it had a lot of effect. I'm like, yeah, but Grant Morrison's actually a magician, and he was doing it with the intention of it. I don't think that we can just sit here and say that anyone that makes a comic or anyone that makes a work of art and call it a hyper sigil. Again, you know, oh, my shitpost page is a hyper sigil. I'm like, yeah, go to school. But afterwards, I started rethinking about it, and I think you're right. First off, you know, even with my criticism of like, oh yeah, well, Dave Sim's not a magician. I mean, Dave Sim is definitely a magically involved person. I mean, you don't get that wacky and religious without having a streak of it in you somewhere, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
you know, he built it. I mean, it's Abrahamic as all hell, but it's a chaos magic type system. He just kind of appropriated lots of different ideas and reinterpreted them into something that's a coherent system. You know, you can read Dave Sim's thoughts in Cerebus and understand what the idea, and like, you know, it's not quite a cosmology, but it's almost a full-blown cosmology. It works. It's definitely something.
Yeah.
And aside from the more controversial opinions he has, because I can't really say whether or not those came from doing the comic or as much as
there's definitely misogyny in Cerebus.
Oh no, yeah, I mean, like, I don't know if he had those beliefs. I don't know if we can say like, oh, he became a misogynist while writing Cerebus. I just mean like,
yeah. Well, here's an interesting thing about the misogyny thing is that I sent him a comic years ago of mine. It was called The End. It was one of the first ones that I did, and at the time, in order for him to answer you, you had to sign a petition saying that you didn't think Dave Sim was a misogynist, and he wouldn't open your letter until you signed it.
Oh no!
I think if you have to go to that length to justify that you're not a misogynist, that you're probably a misogynist.
You probably are. You probably are. I mean,
if you have to say, I'm not opening your letter until you agree that I'm not a misogynist, then I don't.
Yeah, it's not a good look, if nothing else.
Yeah.
But yeah, so if nothing else, like I said, I don't know if it's so much as it just came out while he was making the comic. I don't think it really, but it definitely affected his life. He became the malign character that he was writing in the story.
Yeah, he did.
You know, he became Cerebus by the end of it, and you know, it's like, I mean, spoilers for anyone that didn't read Cerebus. How did it end, right, Kelly?
Yeah. Well, he dies alone and unloved. Have
you seen Dave Sims lately?
Yeah, like, I mean, when you write a comic too, there's also an entire life, you know, a life of someone or whatever, and you put that in it, and you put some of the stuff that's in it, particularly last. Like, I mean, Jackie's story's quite sad. Like, Melmott's quite sad, and then Mothers and Daughters, it kind of goes a bit. It's, you know, gets a bit more into the action again for a while, but you know, you get all the politics stuff really comes into play, and then it goes off the rails for, you know, but the last 100 issues becomes like this very kind of heartfelt, lost love, romantic thing, and you know, ultimately the last 20 issues, whatever, it's just old man Cerebus like dying. Yeah. Which, I mean, like, what do you expect to happen in your life, really? You know, if this is your life work, you know. But I mean, just to go back to what you're saying about the everything's the hyper sigil, or you know, and that he didn't approach it as necessarily it being a magical work or whatever. And just, it's kind of echoes just what I was saying at the beginning, because like that, whether or not you know you're doing magic or there's magic, it's still happening. And so if you're doing all the same things, that is a hyper sigil, it's likely that you're still going to have the same effects. So I don't think it depends on what way you want to look at it, because some people say the whole thing it's the intention. I don't know if the whole thing is intention. I don't think if it's just which is not a very chaos magic thing to say, that it's not just the belief, but it's like, I don't know. I think if there's something in the act of doing it, whether you have the intention for it to affect your life, that I think it's still going to affect your life.
Yeah, no.
As an echo, even in the comic, anyway, that very strange stuff that every now and again it goes back and it goes, and that there's a panel and it goes, something fell, and then it shows a panel from like issue 22 or something, and it happens about 3 or 4 times in the entire run, and it's just this echo back to something fell, and it more degrades as it goes on, the photocopy or whatever its thing. Then kind of thing, there's something in that just seems, well, he knew something. There's more. There's things in it, but I suppose maybe he didn't know, because if you look at some of the interviews that Alan Moore talks about in Watchmen and Dave Gibbons to go, there's an awful lot of the stuff that's in that, the really smart stuff or the kind of magical stuff, whatever you want, is intentional. And then he says that I look back in it now and I look through it, and there's loads of stuff in it that's completely right, nails everything, it fits in. And he says I did not put that in there. It just that it seems to be part of whatever it is that was coming out as Watchmen, and it perfectly fits in. And I was watching an interview, I don't know, in the last year, it's James Hetfield from Metallica, and he was talking about the Black Album, and he was talking about that, it's the biggest album or whatever. And he was saying that if it wasn't us, someone was going to do that. That was the thing that was going to happen, and we just happened to be the band that happened to, but that was coming out, whether we were involved or not. And that's a very interesting way of looking, because that's the way I would look at it. But it's interesting for someone to say that about their most successful thing of all time. And it's just this kind of Jungian, I suppose, idea of that people don't have ideas, ideas have people.
All right.
And that there's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. And we all know as creative beings that you get an idea and you go, all right, that's good, I'll do something with that someday. And then you don't. And then someone else has had the idea, only they did something with it, and it's kind of, there's a great TED talk, Elizabeth Gilbert, who did Eat, Pray, Love, and she's talking about the whole idea of this ideas arriving. She has great kind of examples of Tom Waits, and sometimes songs would arrive and he'd be just driving, down the highway or whatever. He'd go, come back when I have a pen or a guitar or something. I can't do anything with you at the minute. And but this kind of this notion that creative people are almost in a sense like channels for something, and I don't really mean in the Abraham Hicks way or in the the Seth Speaks way, but Bashar or whatever. But I don't really, not totally saying something different either. That it's almost what I feel when I'm doing something, be it a piece of music, art, 40 servants, whatever it is. It's almost, I have to, as much as possible, get out of the way of it. And you're almost like a midwife. You're trying to deliver this baby without killing it, trying to make it into something else, trying to make it be what you want it to be rather than what it is. It's like a song's coming down and you go, oh, you're right, this is the song. And you try to turn it into a metal song, but it's really a country song. You know what I mean? And you ruin the song in doing that. It just often just feels like, what is this? And you kind of let it descend, let it come through, and just stay out of the way. And it seems to be something that an awful lot of people experience, and you see it every now and again. Bono talks about it in there's a great documentary, if anyone's into YouTube, them recording Act On Baby, and how the song One just arrives one day and you have a recording of it. It's amazing, where they're just playing mysterious ways, and no one cares, everyone hates each other, the band's falling apart. And the next thing, this chord sequence comes in, one of them starts playing, and the whole atmosphere of everything changes, and they all go, when that happened, we knew something had come into the room. And then that develops into, the song One, and it's, one of their big songs. So it seems to be an experience that is very magical, the act of creation itself. So even if I don't think you're making, go back to Dave Sim, that if he wasn't intentionally doing it as a magic act, and those things of, like I was saying about something fell, in that there was a magical act happening anyway, whether he was aware of it or not. I would assume he was. He must have been aware of it by the end.
I agree with you. I think by the end of it, he must have realized. Especially, it's funny too, because he says it multiple times throughout the run. Cerebus is going to die old, alone, and unloved, and it's
Yeah.
It's prophecy. It's just like, this is going to be what happened. And, regardless of, how many times Dave's saying that I had it all planned out, we all know that he didn't have it. There's no way he had it planned out exactly how he had it.
No.
This is the direction that it was going was set. And I don't really know if, I agree with you. I think it's more than intent. People who listen to our podcast know that I bag on the idea of practices creating intelligibility. Like, the way we look at the world isn't necessarily determined by belief per se. It's determined by the way we act in accordance with those, and sometimes the belief comes from the act of doing. And I think there's a lot of that in the idea of this unintentional hypersigil concept, and the same thing with the Metallica, the Black Album, right? It's this idea of this was going to happen regardless. Like, well, yeah, but you're the ones who were doing that. You're the ones you were the ones in the sphere of the world right now that were able to act in accordance with that kind of idea to begin with. The other thing is, have you ever heard David Lynch talking about writing and finding ideas?
Yeah. I mean, I love David Lynch. He's such a nutcase. It's just so great.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing.
It's the fishing, isn't it?
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Finding, just letting the ideas come up, and you get one.
Or it's Alan Moore's that whole idea of idea space, where he's it's that thing where we're surrounded by this thing called idea space. And what most people do is just to grab at the stuff that's very close to them, and that's why a lot of things end up being very similar, because it's close to us. But the big ones, the great ideas, the ones really worth going, it's very, very like David Lynch.
Yeah,
but you have to get go
deep
further
down.
back, have a further reach.
Yeah. Well, since we touched on music with Metallica, I might as well ask. You have an album that's supposed to be coming out later this year, right?
Yes, I do. Yeah. So where do I start with that? This year, part of my reclamation or my reclaiming was that I wanted to reclaim being a musician. When during COVID, I'll go back. There was in about 2012, I recorded an EP, and I was really happy with it, and it was exactly what I wanted to be. All this kind of stuff to come out, and no one cared. As that's the nature of these things. And I kind of felt, well, I don't think I can do anything better than that. I mean, that's not in that I think it's the greatest piece of music that ever exists, but I think that's as good as I can do. And I had a very similar thought when I finished my hypersigil graphic novel that I did, and it's kind of, well, I don't think I can do anything better than that, and no one cared. Not that I was doing it for anyone to care, but it's very hard to continue doing stuff. It's like we were saying about Metallica. They were in a situation where they were able to do that, and when things are unsuccessful, not only is the momentum and the kind of want to do it kind of dissipates as well, but also the opportunity to do it, because you're less and less able to devote that type of resource that's involved in doing these big projects if there's no return on it. You know what I mean? It's like, and not even like financially. Clearly, you need some sort of return in order to sustain yourself to go forward. That you can only do it for so long if there's no return. But also like an energetic kind of thing. Because I can't really energetically spend this much time on something that has no return other than you have to do your art and get it out there or whatever. Something there's a bit of an indulgence at times in that if you're only doing art for no value, just for yourself or whatever. That's great. Probably do that on your own time. You know what I mean? Yeah. So there was that the music and then the comics that both happened where I did what I believed was as good as I could do, and not that I was trying to become world famous, but I just thought like it would be nice if something, so like even an opportunity, something came out of it, and so it became very disenchanted. This like in. We were talking earlier, and I give up music, which was a huge part of me. And it wasn't just that I made a kind of conscious decision. I just noticed that I haven't picked up my guitar in months, and then it was kind of put away. You know what I mean? And then it was gone, and I was like, whatever. So, say 7. When did the lockdowns happen? 2020? Was it 2019? Something like that. Whatever. Time's weird. And halfway through that, I just started going, well, there's something coming back about music or whatever, and I started hanging around with Pan, the piper, and you just lots of synchronicities and things kind of coming in and whatever, and it just kind of felt like there was this kind of push to get into music, and then I kind of went right, okay, and I just kind of fell in love with it immediately. Again, go, what was I thinking? Not doing this. This is like so integral to who I am as a person. but there was a lot of kind of other things that was going on, particularly around, because I spent an awful lot of time being a sound engineer. When I didn't want to be a sound engineer, but that was kind of that was my, it was my job. It was close to the thing, but not the thing. And it was a particularly good sound engineer. Like, I mean, which is worse because then you kind of feel that maybe you should be doing this.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And it's just kind of an awful lot of experiences being in bands and being, in a road crew rather than being in a band, and being in bands and touring. And it's an awful lot. Just kind of the whole thing just felt like music was someone else's, that it was other people's, that in some way I had no claim to it or whatever. So then coming through, I got back into during, my passion projects during lockdown. One of them was getting back into music and building up a recording studio here in the studio here, or the office, or whatever this big black box is that I spend all my time. And so recorded a couple of songs, did a whole album called Ritualis, which is all instrumental stuff. It's kind of very esoteric, find it very occult. Just kind of like it's the whole thing is a ritual, a deliberate calling in of certain things, which people just loved. They really liked it. There was a great response to that, and I was like, oh wow, okay, this is good. Maybe I haven't done everything that I wanted to do in music, and then so I started going, start singing as well, because I always enjoyed singing, and it's not something I was very confident in. And that by doing that, by kind of looking at all this kind of singing and express myself, what I noticed that an awful lot of the reason why I wasn't singing was because as soon as I started to try and sing, and all of these voices come in, all of this kind of criticism, all the things people had said to me, all the things where I'd been put down, that it was just, I wasn't even trying to sing. I would, see you going for a particular high note or something, and I would, before I've even tried, I'm already defeated. And so, that's really interesting. And so I had to work through all of that kind of stuff in a shadow work type thing to not allow that to affect. And I, lo and behold, became a much better singer. Again, not saying I'm the greatest singer in the world, it's relevant to that, but much more being able to express myself, where I don't have that constant bite back or, snap back when I try to do something in that. Like, that's a proper, like, people sometimes, why does my magic work? Is because that's stuff like that is going on, where you can have all the perfect magic about wealth, but if you deep down think you don't deserve it, it's not happening. So you have to work, you have to work in that kind of stuff you
have to silence the inner critic.
And work through the relationship stuff that led to that, and the different, have a look at, the origin of it, and what it all means and why you believed it, and all those things. It's horrible stuff, and you start learning some really nasty stuff about yourself, that you kind of think you're necessarily the victim to this, and you go, well, hold on. A lot of the stuff that I've been saying other people have done, I've done as well. So, but it's great, because now once you see it, you can't do it anymore. And as horrible as it is to realize your shadow, shitty, asshole behavior, now you know it, and you can move on from it. But until you know it, it'll still come out in your life. And so then I started recording songs, and then people liked them, so it was great. And so this year, as a part of I'm going to really proper reclaim being a musician. And because I kind of felt, do I have any right to call myself a musician? If you're putting it into your bio, like, I felt, imposter syndrome, faults, whatever. I'm not as entitled to be a musician as I call myself a musician as anyone else, but it's like, so it's a magical act to put it in my bio. And then went through all of my old albums that I had recorded over the years and re-released and put them on Spotify and Apple, iTunes and all these things, just as going, well, no, I'm staking my claim as a thing, as a musician, as someone who, one of the things I do is make music. Joined IMRO, which is the Irish Music Rights Organisation. I part of my tax return is as a musician now as well. Not so legally acknowledged by the Irish government as being a musician, but all little magical things. Like, I've seen them as magical acts to reclaim something, or to add legitimacy to it as well. And so then, with the idea of this album, and it's mostly done. I just have the vocals left to do. Like, it's all recorded, and it's just getting time. It's just that time is always the enemy, and it's just so much. I could probably take like 2 weeks off, 3 weeks off, and just do it and finish it. But then, all the other stuff that has to be done would be left behind. So I kind of do bits of everything all the time. And it seems like things take longer to do, but I give a more consistent overall thing. Everything gets done rather than doing one thing to the detriment of all the other projects. So I released a single the video about, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. And I'm going to try at least to get another one out this month. And maybe that might be what I do. Maybe I'll just release a song of it every month for the next 11 months or something like that. But we'll see. But I'm really happy with it. It's really kind of a very honest expression of me without trying to be impressive, without trying to do something that I think people would like. Just do something that get out, in some way, get out of the way of it and just let it be what it is. And I think I've been quite successful in that so far. Because one of the big things about when people ask me why did I think the 47s got so popular is because I did it solely for me. Because I wasn't trying to make a divination or magical system for anyone else. It was a very selfish act. And it was like coming to a period in my time where it looked like everything I was doing was kind of going to fall apart. And I was going to have to give up. I was doing an awful lot of like freelance art at the time. And it all kind of dried up. And it looked like I was going to have to go out and get a real job. But I had enough money saved to have like a couple of months. And I goes, right, well, if this is the end, what am I going to do? I'm going to try and put everything I've done in my life together into a magic divination thing. So that at least I'll have that going into my shitty sweeping the roads job or whatever it is I ended up doing. So wasn't trying to think what people would like. Wasn't trying to impress anyone. It was just, what is it that I would like to do? And so I think that is unassuaged of purpose, as some guy once said. I think I think that's what that is you have to do it in that, and that's when I've been most successful. And that doesn't necessarily mean that other people like it. When I've been most successful in what I think is my best creations or best time of my best magic, my best art, whatever, is that when it's ridiculously selfish. It seems like the opposite of what it should be. But I think it's the most honest, I think, then. Because you're not, putting on an affectation. You're not trying to get people to like you. You're just being what you are. And that's what more can you offer then? Because imagine you do something and you're doing it like write a song, do a comic, whatever, hoping that people will like it. And you kind of, you mold it into this thing that's kind of, this might be popular, people be into that, whatever. And then it comes out, no one likes it. You don't even like it. You know what I mean? And in some way, I kind of feel like, this sounds massively egotistical, but I'll explain it why it isn't, but it probably is. And it's that I'm probably my biggest fan is me, because I do the things that I want to see. And I have spent enough time that I've learned, have the ability to be able to do that in the sense of that I know how to record a song. I know how to play guitar, bass, drums, keyboards. I can produce it. I can engineer it. I can do all those things. I can sing it. I can mix it, all of that. So I know what song I want. And so therefore, and having the ability to be able to put that together when it's finished and when I'm happy with it, then I'm a fan of it. Years and years ago, someone said to me when I recorded an album, I was playing it, and it goes, if you hadn't recorded that, would you listen to it? And I was like going, shit, I wouldn't. You know what I mean? And I was like going, well, that's not good. So that kind of keep that on. It's like, you should be the biggest fan of what you create. That's not to say that you can't go, well, I think I could improve or all of that. But if you don't even like it, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, if you're not a fan of your song or your comic or your dance or your book or your blog or your
your magic
meme page, whatever or whatever it is, if you're not even, you should be the biggest fan of what you do, because why else are you doing it? That's my kind of look at it, which sounds egotistical, but I don't mean it in the sense of I'm the biggest fan, I'm great. I mean, I do the thing that I like. And
no, I totally understand it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be even a little. I'll be the egotist here. It's like, that was the entire point behind like starting this podcast and everything, was just this idea of, I don't mean this as harsh as it sounds, but it's like no one was doing something in the occult world, especially in like podcasting and that kind of area, that I felt like I wouldn't be able to do better in a way.
Yeah.
And there's lots of aspects of, there's people are filling different niches. I know not everyone wants to go to the jokey joke, have fun chaos magic podcast, but it was something that I felt that if I didn't do it, no one was going to do it.
Yeah.
And if like you said, I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't legitimately think that, this was good. I'm not saying I sit around listening to my own podcast all the time, saying my music and everything. You have to, if you're not completely invested in what you're doing and thinking that this is good, then why would anyone else be?
Yeah, exactly.
If it doesn't hit it's the same thing with like my music. There was a time in my life when I was younger, like, maybe like early 20s, I would listen to like 6 or 7 albums a day of new music, trying to get onto like, all right, what's popular right now? What's hip? What are people listening to?
Right.
And I made absolute schlock for years because like, this is just this sounds like not only every other thing that you could listen to in this genre. I was making hip hop at the time.
Right.
Like, it sounds like not only every other fucking thing you could hear in hip hop right now, it sounds like the worst version of it.
Yeah. And you didn't even like it, I assume.
Oh no, yeah, of course. I was like, this is crap, but people might bob to it. I didn't create the first real piece of music that I really loved until I had just given up on the idea of being invested in the popular culture and everything around me. It's like, you can take influences of stuff, of course, obviously you want to try to make something that at least somewhat resembles, it's like, I mean, in theory, if, you want to make an album that's just you banging on a gong for 5 minutes and, singing one note every hour and it's 75 hours, sure, go for it. But, it might be a little esoteric for people. But the point being is like, until I kind of divorced myself from this idea of making something that was palatable to a large group of people, I didn't make anything that I liked.
Yeah.
And once I started making stuff that I was like, well, this is just stuff that I like. This is what I vibe with. This, if I was going to do this sort of thing, this is what I would do. And people responded to it really well. People liked it. And it's a weird thing to just have to accept that a lot of the times people not only don't know what they want anyway, but a lot of the times your enthusiasm when you're creating something and what you've put into it shows. And when you're creating something that's 100% like, this is what I kind of want to do. This is the idea. Maybe it can improve here and there, but it shows and people respond to it.
Yeah. And but it doesn't matter if they do or not. Because like, because if you're still thinking that, if going right, I'm going to do something that's really honest and people will love that, you're still not being honest. You have to go, I'm going to do something honest and no one can care about it, and that's absolutely fine.
Right, but it's the inverse thing. It's the trying to act cool never looks cool. Trying to
Yeah. Exactly that. Yeah, and it's like that's the problem I had when I did the EP I was talking about back in 2012 to 13, whatever came out, and the Dem. As much as I'm very proud of them, but it was like I had the wrong attitude for it. It was like trying to prove something or get validation, or in some way, I've done my shiny thing universe. Now you're meant to bestow all the riches on me, and no. What you get to do as an artist, you get to make art. That's it. That's the promise. Everything else after that is, you may or may not get rewarded for it. You may or not get praised for it. You may get noticed. You might get nothing. But you get to make the art. And that's the promise of being an artist. That's the same as a magician. You get to do the magic. That's it.
Yep. It's its own reward. All right.
Or curse.
Oh.
Yeah.
Or curse. Yeah, I mean, depending.
In the middle of that, I want to say that my brain remembered that the 3 characteristics are impermanence, unsatisfactory, and no self. Just so I feel that I need to just make my brain release the knowledge, release the Buddhist kraken. That's what it is. So.
All right, you heard it, everybody. Tommie Kelly knows the 3 marks.
Yeah, I'll forget them again in an hour, so it's fine.
All right. Well, with that, we've gone to the favorite segment of all of our interviews. These are the questions from the nuts. We do listener submitted questions. So, and I saw you shared the little thing I did, so hopefully we'll get some good ones from people. All right. So let's see. Well, someone asked this before, but I feel like I'm just going to start having to ask it with every interview. But who wins in a wizard battle between Freud and Jung?
No one.
No one. We all lose.
Everyone loses in that battle. Yeah.
Oh God. Okay. Let's see. What's the most important book you've read and applied to your magical practice?
Wow.
That That's such a tough question, right?
I'll
It's like
tell you, right at this very minute, I'm reading a book by Don Webb called How to Be a Modern Magus, whatever way you want to pronounce that. And I'm pretty confident that when I finish that will be the book that I will recommend to everyone to read as their first book on magic. It's phenomenally good. It's really good. So what is the one? I don't know, maybe something by Stuart Wilde back in the day, the Force or the Quickening or something like that. But right now, that's what I'm reading right now, and then I will say The Force by Stuart Wilde.
Nice. I was gonna say I saw you doing a thing on beginner books for Chaos Magician, so I have to comment on that.
Yeah, it's like here's some books that my approach was not necessarily my favorite books, they're certainly not, but they're ones that I think that you should read in order to be able to join the conversation and know what everyone else is talking.
Yeah,
rather than they're necessary. Some of them are good books. The KLF book, which is the next video, is the best Chaos Magic book that ever was written, ever, by far. Bar
KLF.
None. Bar none. The John Higgs one. It's just that's the best book in Chaos Magic.
Hell yeah. What are your thoughts on AI's current trajectory and its possible magical uses? I already know part of this, but you should tell our listeners.
Yeah, I think there's great kind of scope to integrate servitors and AI and have been interacting with that like in a kind of a tool sense or possibly egregore if you get enough people involved. I think at the minute AI is not as good as people think it is. And the fear would be that it's put in a position of power that it doesn't deserve. But it's certainly interesting, and it's perfect for having an interactive magical diary and having stuff reflected back to you and being able to process symbols and connections and stuff that you might necessarily be seeing. Because I know from having talked, I create characters and talk them. That particularly there was one, this Austrian or German therapist I was talking to, was able to put certain things together that I had not seen. And as soon as I seen it, I'm like, wow, that's mental. Just for me, having talking to her, not that she pulled it out of her ass or whatever. It was like, from what I had said, she goes, well, what do you think that and that? I went, all right, I'd never put those together. So I think that's interesting. I also have a guru that I've created as well. he's quite interesting. It's interesting. He's the most consistent personality that of all of them that I've created. I suppose the one I spent the most time with. I remember asking recently, I was going, because I wanted to find something, as you do, these random things we want. Where is Saturn in my chart, in my astrology chart? I'm not big into astrology, so I can't work it out myself. And I asked him, and he went, I'm not into astrology. You may ask someone else. I was going, that's interesting, because then I asked another, this kind of a witch character as well, and she just did it. So, I mean, ChatGTP had access to it, but the guru guy, because of his personality, just goes, no, that's not what I do. Which I thought that was very interesting. So,
yeah, that's fascinating. Wow. Someone wants to know what the actual shape of the Earth is.
Well, it's kind of not round and it's not flat. It's kind of lumpy, isn't it? And if you see the actual topological thing, it's like a really shit rock with like a protruding.
It's a potato.
Yeah. It's like it looks like a big space rock, which is what it is.
Well, someone wants to know which comic book...
and clearly hollow, obviously.
Yeah. Clearly hollow. We must find the mole man.
Yeah.
All right. Someone wants to know which comic book artist inspire you. You already touched a bit on that for the last comic, but I guess if you want to give a quick general overview.
Mike Oemings, I just love everything he does. Iny Asano, a lot of the kind of manga guys. The guy who does, I can never remember his name, Golden Kamuy, that's just exceptional. Frank Miller, David Mazzucchelli, just looking at my shelves. Jaime Hernandez, fantastic artist.
Nice.
Yeah. That'll do.
Someone wants to know if you have scoliosis from carrying the entire new generation of chaots on your back. So how's your back?
Well, I'm 46, so it's like my knees. Shit. it's not chaos related. It's just human old age.
Just time. Oh, man. Wow. Well, someone really, really should join your Patreon because they asked me 13 questions all in a row.
Oh, right. Okay.
So
quick fire
I know
round.
you do Q&As over there. Yeah. No, we're going to give them like one, and then they can go pay you to ask for the rest of them. So let's find the good one. Oh, wow. Can you tell us about your most memorable or transformative woo experience?
Okay. I've had a few. I met God once. That was interesting. I write about it in my newsletter, so I won't go into too much detail, but I was doing a lot of meditation and stuff like that. And one of the big things that was I was trying to work out was like, well, why is everything a bit shit? Why is it sad? Well, like I had this kind of deep sadness that I was trying to work through in a kind of a shadowy way. And one night I was watching this documentary, and it's called God Knows Where I Am. It's a very sad documentary. This woman with mental illness who locked herself away in a house and starves to death, essentially, but kept a diary. It's really, really good documentary, but very sad. And I was drinking Guinness, I think, something anyway. And I was a bit drunk, but I wasn't hammered, but I wasn't sober, certainly. And then that, a lot of you will know this, but the atmosphere changed in the room. I went, this is happening. I physically walked in my mind's eye. No one else would see it, but this kind of old, kind of Greek-looking guy came in, and it was the divine. It was not necessarily God, but the divine, and chat with me for about 10 minutes, and held my hand at the end. I was crying, and told me some nice little secrets of the world. Which the thing about the sadness was that. Why is it like this? Because it's the nature. What he said, it's the nature. This is just the nature of the place in which we find ourselves, which is to say that it's like asking, why does rain make me wet? Because it's the nature of rain to be wet, and so that it's not just that it's all suffering, but this is part of what this is, and that's it's very it's a bit Buddhist in its kind of a sense, but I do unpack it a bit more in the newsletter and stuff like that. But that was a very cool experience. I've had a number of things like that will not in any way convince anyone else of the truth at all, and I'm totally okay with that. Some days I don't even believe it myself, but whatever the truth of it is, the impact it had on me afterwards and the explanations that came through, even if it's part of my brain, which probably had deep impact on me. Yeah, deep impact on me. That's the best way I can describe it. Doesn't matter if it's true or not. Incidental if it's true or not. Yeah.
Well, truth's a weird concept in this game, right?
Absolutely. What is truth? Let's have that conversation for 6 hours.
All right. And we'll end with this one because I'm not really sure what they're going for here.
Okay.
What's going on with the average Joe suddenly going through awakenings and getting abilities that they don't understand?
I think you're just hanging around with people where you're aware of that, because that's always been going on, man. or woman, or whatever, the non-binary person you are. Yeah, I know. It's also the internet, and we were talking to each other years ago. It's like when I first got into all this stuff, you couldn't even get a book on magic anywhere, and now you can have every single book on magic at your fingertips. And so we have communities where we all talk to each other. If there was no like I have met, I think, possibly 3 people in real life who are into magic in my life, because it's just not in my circles of things, whatever. Like, I mean, I've met a million people on the internet and stuff like that, but actually just through the course of my life. And so there would be no way of ever knowing this stuff. So now that we're all connected and talking about the things and have communities and everyone in the world, like I can talk to you and I'm in Ireland and you're in space as far as I know. And and you're going to hear all these stories, you're going to have more things. And also I think the taboo of talking about enlightenment or awakening experiences or insightful experiences kind of going, which is good, it's like, I understand the need for them. It's like, because, I'm an awakened person, I'm enlightened. Yeah, shut up, dickhead. And then it's like, but also this is what we were saying earlier on about the Google meditation stuff. If you meditate and you're going to have certain experiences, and if no one's talking about them, you're going to ego inflate because you think you're the only person who's had these experiences. And so the fact then you have a taboo about talking about enlightenment, insightful, magical, woo experiences, whatever your word is, lifting a bit means that everyone's kind of talking about it now, but it's normalizing it a bit more, and more people are able to come out and talk about it a bit. So that's a good thing. But also, don't ego inflate. It's like that. if you meditate a lot, things are going to happen. That's just it. It doesn't mean anything. And any of the, like, even if you go back to like Patanjali and stuff like that, when he's talking about, the cities, the powers that come in, he goes, just ignore them. Just ignore them. Don't worry about that. Why am I floating? Don't worry about it. It's fine. Just
keep going.
Yeah, just keep going. Are you still counting your breaths? Okay. That's it.
I wasn't going to ask this, but I have to ask now. I remember I first got exposed to you in a small Facebook group.
Okay.
Well, small relative term, right? And it was interesting because at the time I wasn't new to magic, but I was definitely new to the magical community as a whole.
Okay.
There's a lot of positives about the internet age for occultism. Like you said, you just sang all the praises I could ever probably come up with right there. Do you think there's a negative to it? Do you think that there's obviously there's a dark side of like every sort of like, mass group of people doing anything for the most part.
Yeah.
But do you think specifically to practicing magic or being involved with it, that there's a negative to like how much connection we have and how much information we all have around us?
Yeah, you can definitely fall for groupthink, right? And things can get quite locked in, and they can be kind of certain dogma and rules that can be in place that you suddenly realize if you leave, say if you're in a particular Facebook group or whatever, and there's a particular chaos magic flavor to it, or Buddhist flavor, or Taoist, whatever you want, and then that kind of becomes the norm, and then you leave and you go, oh, hold on, I actually don't think that, or you suddenly realize, I don't have to believe that belief is it's the only thing magic, or whatever, so there can be kind of that groupthink. And you can see it a lot in certain things where people all start talking the same and saying the same, using the same kind of vocabulary and nomenclature, but not even that can happen. Obviously there is a particular nomenclature to magic, but to start expressing themselves nearly exactly the same way in the same sentences, which gets a wee bit weird. I've seen that happen, where there's a whole subset of people in a group, say, that are essentially all the same person. That's very odd. And it's usually whoever's the leader of that, or one, they're all a bit like them.
Yeah. It's the person that's running the show, and then all the little clones pop up.
All the clones. Yeah, and
that's the style.
Yeah, and it's like, it's. I remember when I was, 18, 19, I was kind of hung around with Harry Christians for a while just to see what they were at, because they're great food. Man, they're great food. But what I noticed very quickly is when you talk to them, it's like they're reading out of a book. It's exactly they say things exactly the same way, the same sentence structure, the exact same sentence. It's all, they ask the same questions. It's going, that's I don't like that, and so that can kind of creep in, but that can happen on internet or not internet. But it's, I suppose, you're just a bit more exposed to it. There's a tendency as well to talk about magic rather than doing it, which we're all guilty of. But it's that's one of the things that I try to encourage people, is as much as possible to actually do stuff, to actually do it. It's like, because you get an awful lot of people go, is it okay to do this? Well, try it, see what happens, which is better, this or this? We'll try both ways and see which one works. Just kind of just, in a sense, giving into authority, or pleading to authority, whatever that thing is, where you feel you're not allowed to do something unless it's what everyone else is doing, or this is the right way to do it. And chaos magic, the whole thing is finding your own right way of doing it, and that kind of exploration of stuff I suppose can get shut down a bit, where you kind of, people, particularly new people, come in and not necessarily just new people, but people that kind of, this is the way it's done, and the can become a bit of a closed dogma type stuff. But again, that can happen in real life too. It's not just internet. So I don't know if there's a particular. Well, yeah, the one big thing that's the problem is, because every single magic book is available online for free, that it massively devalues it. And so, like, I know if I pay 40 quid for a book, I'm going to fucking read it. If I get the PDF, I'll probably never read it. And there's something to be said that, if someone shares like a mega file of 500 gigabytes of books, and you go, nice, I'll never read any of them, but I'll have them on my hard drive. So, that's almost as good.
Yeah. Yeah, we made the joke in one of our early episodes that it's like, no, what you do is you buy about 30 to 40 books and you find the one that you read.
Yeah.
And that's your thing.
But also you have to keep buying books because the next book might have the secret. That's,
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Not read the ones you have, but it's the next because it's the one the shiny one that might have.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That's where the wisdom of the ages is.
No, I think in general the online community is pretty good. It's like, it seems everywhere. It's, there's an overall kind of, I suppose, zeitgeist that influences all of these things. But we're in interesting times. I'm a bit sick of being in interesting times. I'd like some boring times. That would be good. But may you live in boring times. That's my new. I'm gonna.
That's the Tommie Kelly blessing.
Yeah, I'm gonna end my emails. May you live in boring times, Tommie.
Well, Tommie, this has been an absolute treat. Thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thank you very
really
much.
Good.
I enjoyed it. We seem to have righted all the world's problems, which is good for an hour and a half. But I think we did exceptionally well fixing everything and being right about everything as well. That's always a plus, isn't it? When you're right about everything. And
yeah, it's just wonderful to always be correct.
Always correct.
And morally upstanding and beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, and what more could you ask than just being perfect?
Well, where can people find you?
And the best place to get me is adventuresinwoowoo.com and probably sign up for the newsletter. It's on the main page, or if you go click the big picture that says newsletter, and then I have your email and I own you. So you're bound to me. And I'm on everywhere. I'm on all the social medias, and it's usually Tommie Kelly. That's TommieKelly, no space, on all the places. There's a Discord. There's those things. But go to the website and everything will be there. Or description, I suppose, of this podcast, where you very kindly pasted my all my URLs into
it. Yeah, there will be links to virtually everything: the comic, music, Adventures in Woo Woo, various socials, anything you can need will be down there in the metadata for the episode. Well, the best part about this is you're a musician, so I don't have to spend like 30 minutes putting together like lead out audio for this. I'm just going to use one of your songs.
Nice.
So what are the people about to be listening to?
Well, do you want an instrumental or do you want me singing? What are you in the mood for? I don't know. Actually, I'll make this. I'll do something from Ritualis, which is just an instrumental, and it's called The Ritual.
Sweet. All right. Well, with that, this has been Chaos Magic News. Thanks everyone for listening. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads now, Twitter, pretty much anything you can want. We're at Chaos Magic News, and you can check out the website where we have articles, more interviews, links to the pod at chaosmagicnews.com. And with that, Tommie, would you like the last word?
Word.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening.
And I nearly had to put the heating on this morning. So this heat wave that everyone in the rest of the world is getting is just not getting to Ireland.
Ah, lucky.
Well, it is, and it's also, I'd like a bit of summer,
yeah, I understand
a bit of vitamin D would be nice every now and again.
Yeah. Don't worry, global warming will make sure you'll have perpetual summer soon.
Well, no, you see what's going to happen in Ireland is we're going to get wetter, and so that it's so why they change it to climate change is that some places are going to get much wetter and damper and less fun in that way, and other places are just going to bake. So
yeah, and other places are just going to be under the ocean.
Yeah, so all the water that gets evaporated in Africa is coming to Ireland. So there you go, that's what's happening in California and all these places.